Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Injustice: Gods Among Us. Yeah, it's an oldie, and it's a game that came out in 2013, which is kind of nuts to think about. But I happen to have this on my PC. Now, originally when I got this game, I got it on the Wii U. I actually played a lot of it when I had it on Wii U, but they never released all the DLC. So a little while ago, I ended up buying this and the second game. And again, like I keep saying with a lot of videos, in that continuous thing about going from a back catalogue, this was more a case of I just fancied replaying this game to see if it still held up. So that's kind of what this video is about. Like, does this game still hold up as a fighting game? If you don't already know, I mean, I'm pretty much a casual fighting game person. I like to play a lot of like Street Fighter, Smash, Mortal Kombat, you know, a lot of the classic fighting games. And Injustice is one of those ones that's made by NetherRealm Studios, so it's got that Mortal Kombat feel to it, which means it's a little bit on the easier side in terms of executing specials and stuff like that, but it has like a very particular playstyle. It feels very similar to like things around the time, like Mortal Kombat 9, stuff like that would have been around the time of this. So, but this is not a crazy... This is one of those games that came out before fighting games started getting really in-depth, like training modes, really in-depth, like other options and things like that. So in some ways this game feels a little bit light on content, but you know, for what it was at the time, it was actually quite a good game, and the roster and things like that really helped you know, allow this game to do pretty well. So this is the Ultimate Edition that I have. Comes with all the DLC, which is primarily just, I think, 6 characters, and on top of that a bunch of DLC skins and things like that. So let's just talk about the game in general first off. Let's talk about how the game looks. Surprisingly, it holds up fairly well. I did get a few performance issues, so the footage you're going to see on screen is reduced a little bit. It can look better than what you're seeing. Obviously, compression of YouTube doesn't help either. But the game doesn't look bad. It is a little bit on the sort of washed out grey side, I would say, with this game. A lot of like nighttime levels, a lot of like, there's not a lot of colour in this game, and that's kind of the only downside to it. It's got that very much DC universe, like the film universe, where everything's like darker looking. But that's kind of what they're going with, considering what the story is and things like that. But it's a decent looking game, and you have a pretty decent variety in places you fight. You've got like Atlantis, you've got like the Batcave, Metropolis, Gotham, all the sort of places you'd expect to be. And one thing that was really cool about this game when it came out at the time was the stage transitions. If you smacked someone hard enough on a certain side of a stage, they could take damage and you'd get a nice animation. The downside to that, and with the version I've been playing, is that it keeps causing performance issues, so we'll come on to that a little bit later. But yes, you have your stage transitions, you have a mixture of stages, you have what I consider to be a fairly good roster. The roster's split into two sides: heroes on the left, villains on the right. 15 apiece, that's including the DLC characters, and there's some good choices here. Like everyone you think, you know, for the main sort of characters you'd expect to hear. You know, mostly. You know, you've got your Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. You've got Green Arrow, Flash, Green Lantern. You know, all the classic kind of heroes. And the same with the villains. You've got Black Adam, Sinestro, Doomsday, Harley Quinn, Joker. You know, there's a ton of Bane. There's a ton of a really good mix of villains and heroes here, and I think this roster's really good. Even the DLC characters. I mean, you've got Zatanna, Batgirl, and Martian Manhunter for like the good side, and then you've got Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, Lobo, and Zod, I think it is, on the villain side. So, you know, for a 30 character roster, this is a pretty damn good roster. There's a lot of characters in here. This game is very zone heavy, I would say. There's a lot of characters in here that have like long range weapons. A lot of their, like if you take Deathstroke for example, Deathstroke has lots of guns. He has like fairly decent range at middle to long range with them as well. So there are a couple of characters that are a bit of a pain to deal with because of the way that that's designed. But overall, the roster pretty solid. One thing I will say is that this is a really good fighting game for a lot of people to start off in. The controls here are fairly simple. You have a light attack, a medium, and a heavy. Your heavier button is kind of also the button that uses you to smack people off the wall and also off the ground to extend combos. And then the other button you have, really, excluding throws and things, is your special ability that is connected to the character. So if you're playing as Batman, for example, that will spawn some bats and that act as little explosive bats that you can use. Doomsday gets like heavy armor, essentially, so he can't be interrupted. green arrow gets the ability to fire arrows. Like that one button is specifically just does one thing. It activates an ability related to that character. It's a very unique ability. So the game revolves around you using primarily light and medium attacks with the heavy attacks, and it's a case of like you push like light heavy, light medium, back medium light, sort of things like that. They're like the sort of 3 to 4 hit moves are not that difficult to learn. The move lists aren't that long. And so it makes it, for a lot of people, if you're getting into fighting games or trying to learn fighting games, this is a bit of an easier one to start with, and I kind of appreciate that. For someone like me that's used to like the 6-button stuff, like with Street Fighter, light, medium, heavy for both punches and kicks, I definitely prefer that to this control scheme, but I think this one works well. And if you were trying to teach someone like, hey, this is how this fighting game works, and you push a direction and the punch, or you push this punch button twice and then this one a third time, it's fairly straightforward to do that. And the other thing is, because it's made by NetherRealm, pulling off special moves very easy. Backwards, forwards, down, backwards, forwards, backwards. Like it's always forward, backward, down, back, down, forward. It's not like you have to roll the controls like you do in Street Fighter. It's just like that. Fairly simple, nice and easy. You can power up those. You've got your gauge at the bottom that you can use to power up certain moves as well, like extend combos or do extra damage or cancel out of things. Like, this game's got enough complexities for someone to learn and get good at it, but it's not outrageously difficult like some other fighting games. Like, you know, fighting games coming out now like Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1, games that have a lot of combo strings and a lot of bigger combos and things to think about. This is a much simpler game for that. Which, you know, again, double-edged sword. For people that want to get into fighting games, good. For people that are more veterans, probably not. I know that this game's competitive scene, I think it was Batgirl and some of the other characters that got added in kind of ruined it, but it's a very zone-heavy game. You know, if you've got abilities to like keep people away, it seems to be that kind of game. And one thing that I will say that, you know, the guys at NetherRealm do pretty well is giving you a lot of single-player content. This has like a 4 to 5 hour story mode where you play 3 or 4 matches of most of the characters through the roster. It's a fun story. It, you know, keeps you entertained. You've got your classic arcade mode, and you've got a bunch of different battles. Different types of battles you can do within that, which is really cool. And then you've also got Star Labs, which is like your mission mode. And I think this is similar to what they started off with Mortal Kombat 9. Essentially, in that game you walk through a tower, and this you work through sort of mini stories and missions and things, which is kind of cool, and that leads to unlocking things and bits and bobs. It's even though it feels maybe a little bit on the smaller side of a fighting game in terms of content, I think there's enough content to keep somebody interested here, and it definitely does a fairly decent enough job of trying to get you to learn to play multiple characters and understand how they work. So you can't really complain too much about that. And the one good thing is there aren't that many downsides to this game because of the size of it, because of what it is. Like, there's only a few things I can say here that I can criticize the game for. One being performance issues. I ran into, for a game that came out in 2013, this game should run flawlessly on my PC with the setup that I have. It doesn't, and especially doesn't during stage transitions, where, like, especially on the Arkham one, where you have all the different villains hitting the character, oh man, it would like drop and stutter, and God knows the frame rate would drop, and I don't know why that was the case. I went into the settings and had a fiddle and managed to change up some stuff, but it still was like, and you never want frame drops, and you never want a dip in performance in any game, but in a fighting game, it's especially bad because that leads to some missed inputs, or you know, just your characters doing things you don't expect, lag, things like that, and that's never good. Now, for the most part, fighting, it was never an issue. It was during those sort of stage transitions, cutscenes, which is fine, I guess, because you're not actively doing anything at that time, but it's still not good. And for a game that came out in 2013, it just says to me there was some kind of issue with the game loading during those situations. But you know, like I said, it wasn't the end of the world, but I still had the occasional frame dip and things like that while I was playing. So that's never good in a fighting game. You never want to see that. So if you are the sort of person that would be interested in playing this game, and especially it's probably going to go on offer a lot and be incredibly cheap these days, just be aware if you're sensitive to performance issues at this, you might want to whack everything down. One of the weirdest things is just the AI in this game sometimes. Like, most of the time it's pretty good, it's pretty even, but occasionally it will just body you as a human player. It will just land all the combos and all this stuff. You'll be winning, and suddenly you won't be winning and you'll be losing. The AI just has these spikes of like, nope, I'm going to read everything you're doing and I'm going to call you out on it. and then you lose, and you're like, well, never mind. That seemed a bit random, but it does happen. And the only other thing is, like, I'm not a competitive player, so I don't know what the competitive scene was like when this game had it. But it doesn't feel like there's a high skill ceiling here. I feel like most characters seem simple enough to learn, which is good for beginners. But if you are someone who's more pro, you're just going to work out the busted stuff, and that's it, really. It doesn't seem like there's that many combo paths and stuff. I could be completely off base saying that. I really don't know. But from the limited time playing it again recently, and from playing it back in the day, it doesn't feel like there's you can do like a decent amount of combos, I think, with it, but it feels like there might be 1 or 2 routes per character, and that's about it. And I think some characters with a lot of ranged attacks are going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. There might be where you want to put your time and effort. But it's an interesting game. It's interesting playing this just before we got on that cusp of where we are now with games like Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6, games that have a lot of content and games that have had a long lifespan, and games that have a lot of like different modes and updates and stuff. This was just before all that sort of stuff happened. So it's really interesting revisiting a game from that sort of generation and being like, this is the game, this is what it got upgraded with, you know, patches and some characters, and that was really about it, and skins. So but it's just, it's fun revisiting these sort of games and going back and doing it, because fighting games, for the most part, if you enjoyed a fighting game 20 years ago, you're going to enjoy that fighting game now, as long as it runs well, because you're enjoying the mechanics of it. This might not be a game I return to that much. Like I said, I played a lot of it when it was on Wii U. Like, it was one of those games that came to Wii U, and I was like, oh, I'm all over this. But I just think I prefer different fighting mechanics and things for it to be like a mainstay for me. But if you are looking for like a cheap fighting game that has a decent story mode and actually has a nice variety of characters, this game's going to be on sale a lot, if not, you know, already fairly cheap in this market. So something is worth maybe picking up. There isn't that much wrong with it. Just don't expect a huge amount of content. And if you're looking at playing, I doubt many people are playing online anymore. I could be wrong, but I'm sure people still play this game. But it's might be more of like a single player experience than something you look to do playing multiplayer. I do want to check out Injustice 2. I've never played that game, so I'll be looking into playing that at some point soon and giving that a whirl and seeing how much has changed and improved on it. But Injustice Gods Among Us is a very solid fighting game. Just might feel a bit bare bones in today's climate. So if you're looking for something maybe a bit cheaper, definitely worth a look, and it's got a good roster. So anyway, that's going to do it for me today then, guys. Thank you very much for watching as always. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description below. And until next video, I will see you then.